Yeah, hi, this is Scott Dudley from Funnel Fella Radio, and we're up to podcast episode number 8, which is all about landing pages. So, when you want to use a landing page to get signups, one of the big decisions you need to make is whether to use long copy or short copy, as well as a whole heap of other different variations, and just how much copy is enough copy. So, usually the general rule is that short copy is the norm for a free offer. But having said that, I think you can't take anything for granted, and it's always best to test and find out what works in your specific situation. So with that in mind, here's an excellent case study that talks about this particular topic, and it's from the CXL blog, formerly known as ConversionXL, and this talks about how they managed to improve landing page conversions by 79.3% for this particular company. And this is for a company called Truckers Report, and they are a network of professional truck drivers who are connected by an industry forum. And this is where they share information and assist in each other's careers. You could call it a niche site, but it's not really the smallest of niches, because it's bringing in over 1 million visits each month, which is close to 5 million page views. And if you have a look at it, with 5 million page views per month, and if you improve your landing page conversions by 79.3%, then that is a lot of money. And in this particular case study, they went through 6 rounds of tests, which I'm not going to go into in detail for all of them, otherwise we'd be here all day. But basically, if you look at the initial landing page that they had set up, it was pretty dull, old-fashioned and simple. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it certainly looked outdated, and it was nothing flash. So you've got the logo up the top, and then underneath the logo you've got two guys shaking hands. Then you've got the main headline underneath. Then on the left-hand side you've got a sub-headline, a paragraph, and then 3 bullets. And then on the right-hand side you've got the actual form, which has 5 fields and a submit button. And that's pretty much all there is to the landing page. And that was converting at 12.1% for email opt-ins. So they ended up analysing that page using Google Analytics, and they also set up some mouse tracking data collection with click data, scroll maps, attention heat maps, which are fascinating bits of software that you can install on your website that will show you exactly where people are scrolling down the page. It will show you where they're clicking on it, and all sorts of interesting stuff like that. And it's actually pretty easy to set up with Hotjar as well, which is free to get started with. So really there's no reason why you can't start taking a look at this stuff yourself as well. So from there, they also wanted to understand the audience better. They ran an online survey to try to get into the head of the truck drivers, to work out their pain points, their core desires, things such as why were they looking for a new job, what matters the most about truck driving jobs, what were the main motivators, the main hesitations and questions when considering a new job. So from the insights that they got from the survey, and also from the research that they did, they ended up finding out that mobile formed about 50% of the total traffic, which is pretty interesting, and that truck drivers were usually using the website while they're on the road, actually in the truck itself. So that's why it was important to have mobile responsive pages. They realised that the original headline was weak with no benefit. So that headline is "Truck Drivers Needed ASAP," which is a shocking headline. So they're bang on the mark there. They're saying that it's got a cheesy stock photo, the good old handshake, need a better photo that people would relate to. We have a look at it, and absolutely that is a pretty boring looking photo. And as I was saying before, they realised that it was a simple but boring design that just looks too basic and amateurish. Absolutely. They realised that they were lacking in proof and credibility. There's absolutely no credibility or proof on here at all. And from the survey that they ran, they ended up finding out that drivers wanted three things the most, which doesn't surprise me when you look at it, because they wanted better pay, more benefits, and they also wanted more home time. So none of that is a surprise. And other things that they were interested in were better working hours, well-maintained equipment, respect from the employer, and also some were jaded by empty promises and had negative associations with recruiters. So all of that sort of stuff is not that surprising. But I mean, a lot of it they wouldn't have even been aware of if they didn't survey. So anyway, they created the new design, which looks a lot better. Instead of having a headline before of truck drivers needed ASAP, they changed that to get a truck driving job with better pay, which is a much better headline. They also changed the image from that boring handshake to a large full-size image of a guy standing in front of a truck, smiling and looking friendly, so a lot more relatable than just the handshake. They're also aware that the left side of the screen gets more attention, so they kept the copy on the left, which is a good idea because obviously whenever you're reading something you always start from the left-hand side unless you're reading in a different language. So they redesigned that the page based on those insights. And then another interesting thing too here is that they tested the opt-in form where for the control, they've got 4 fields, which is name, email, state, and driving experience. The last 2 having drop downs, and then the button. And then for the variation, they have got the same headline, which is create your profile and start getting job offers, but they just have the email address field and then the button. So what most people would have thought, and myself included, is that the variation with just the email address and the button would have converted better, with the logic being that fewer form fields equals less friction and less hassle to fill out the form, which results in more conversions. But interestingly enough, that wasn't the case, because the longer form converted by 13.56% better than the variation with just the email address and the submit button. So what they got from that is that more testing is often needed to figure out, which is better rather than just assuming. And the hypothesis was that adding more fields gives more credibility, or it adds more relevancy, whereas just a plain email field can look spammy, which I guess is an interesting point. I guess it depends on the industry, but in that particular case, it was better with the added form fields. And then they tested the headlines. So copy that addresses most common problems truck drivers are facing, and using the words that they've actually used from the survey. So there's a great insight there, is that when you're conducting a survey and you get the survey data, it's a great idea to use the exact same phrases that people are using in your headlines. That's one thing that Ryan Levesque's ask formula is excellent for. So they tested get a truck driving job with better pay against get better pay, more benefits, and ample home time. So the second headline had the 3 benefits, whereas the first headline had just the 1 benefit, but it was sort of shortened to the point. And it looks like there wasn't any testing these 2 headlines. There wasn't any difference in landing page opt-ins, but there was a 21.7% difference in bottom of the funnel conversions. So that's interesting. So that's the main things to learn from these tests. We haven't got time to go through everything, but if we look at the conclusions, there's some interesting points that they've made down here. when you start testing a page, don't test just once and move on to testing other parts of the site. And don't think of the process as one-off tests, but as testing campaigns. So when you're looking at one particular area of the page, rather than just doing one test and then saying, oh, that's the results, let's move on to another part of the page, it's best to keep testing, as he's saying, as an iterative process. They're also saying here to learn from each test, make sure you send test data to Google Analytics and segment the results, and keep iterating. And also they're saying to use insights from previous tests to drive upcoming tests. So that's a good point as well. You won't know what matters until you test it, and you need to have a lot of patience. Well, that sounds like it's exactly right. So the more stuff you keep testing, the more data, the more information you get, and a lot of it can tie in together and relate to each other as far as coming up with the final designs. And then the last thing here, if we had only tested the control versus the new landing page, we wouldn't have reached 79.3%, and we're just getting started. So that's an excellent point as well. And if you look at the way that they've explained that, just because they've got to 79.3%, they're not going to stop. They're going to keep trying and increase it even more. And considering that they're getting those 5 million page views per month, that's big money, so you can't blame them. So pretty interesting case study there. That's on the CXL blog, but that's pretty much all I've got for today. So hope you got some value out of that, and I'll catch up with you in the next episode. Bye for now.